Morning. We have Geoff McDonald from a former global vice president from Unilever.
Hi, Eve. How are you doing?
Yes, thank you very much. Very good. And obviously, in your work with Unilever, you've been there for many years in sort of in a board level position. So I would like to ask you. What are some practical steps do you think that organization can take to foster a more inclusive workplace culture? And how have you seen these approaches succeed in your experience at Unilever?
Yeah, Eve. I'm probably not an expert on diversity and inclusion, but one of the things that I'm very passionate about is creating cultures in organizations which feel very inclusive from the point of view of one's mental health. So, I often say that, are you a truly inclusive culture if I can't come to work and talk about some of my mental and emotional struggles that I might be going through? Because we have most cultures where we can talk about our physical struggles, but there are very few organizations where people feel very open to talk about some of their mental and emotional struggles. And for me, that's the ultimate of being an inclusive culture. And I hope at our session that I participate in the next couple of weeks with you, I'll be able to share what are some of the things that an organization can be doing to create that more inclusive culture when it comes to the whole topic of mental health and mental ill health. From education to training to campaigning to storytelling. I hope to be able to share some thoughts on how to go about creating that sort of culture.
Sounds wonderful. Yes, because our so corp well-being events, it's all about bringing leaders together, influential voices to sort of to foster, to trigger that transformation. So we're so pleased to have you. And also, do you think so? What role does the leadership play in creating and sustaining that inclusive environment? And what are some key qualities of inclusive leaders, do you think?
Yeah, look, I think leaders have a very, very, very important role to play, because it's the way in which they behave, what they say, what they do, how they act, what they role model. All those facets of leadership is so, so important in influencing the culture. But leaders also decide on the infrastructure of an organization. They decide on what sort of policies you want to have in place, what processes you want to have in place in the organization, what systems. And it's always so important to make sure that those policies, those processes, and those systems align to the sort of behaviors that you want to encourage in the organization. And so it's not only about leadership behavior, it's also about leaders making decisions on having the right policies, systems, and processes that will support and encourage the sorts of behaviors that you want. And I think leaders who drive for a more inclusive culture, I think they have to be, as leaders, I think they have to be able to show a degree of vulnerability. I think vulnerability is very, very important. I think these leaders need to be compassionate. They need to, because we often talk about compassion and empathy. And the difference between compassion and empathy is in compassion, there's no judgment. And to create a truly inclusive culture, I think we need to have more compassionate leaders, who show compassion and aren't there to judge and to make judgments. I think they need to be good listeners. They need to be able to put themselves in the shoes of others who might be feeling excluded. And I think they need to be very action orientated in making decisions and then making sure that we execute a strategy that is going to be successful in beginning to shift the culture and creating a more inclusive workplace. So vulnerable, compassion, empathetic, and absolutely driven to ensure successful execution of a strategy.
Thank you, Geoff. And I specific examples or initiatives that you've been a part of or witnessed that effectively promoted diversity and inclusion within organization, perhaps
Yeah,
Unilever or any
when
other
when I
organization
was at
you work
Unilever, there was a big debate around the whole diversity and inclusion and our approach to that. And I remember we always used to debate whether we should be setting targets around diversity and inclusion. Lots of debates around that. But at the end of the day, I do believe that we should be setting some targets. We should be measuring what progress we are making towards increasing the diversity and creating a more inclusive culture. So for me, that's really, really important. We also began to make sure that some of our systems and processes aligned to that. So when it came to a promotion or when it came to a recruitment for a particular job, it was important that we ensured that on the shortlist were candidates that could be classified as bringing diversity and greater inclusion to the organization. So you couldn't just go ahead and promote anybody. I mean, on that promotion, that final slate of who could get promoted, there had to be a diverse slate. When it came to, as I say, recruiting people, bringing them into a new role, there had to be a diverse slate. And yes, we did set targets for ourselves so that we could monitor the progress and celebrate some of the successes when we achieved some of those targets.
Yes, I totally agree, because unless you can actually measure it, how do you know which direction you're moving?
Yeah, I often say, we measure what we treasure. We measure what we treasure. So if we don't really treasure it, then we don't measure it. And so I think we need to have those measures in place if we truly treasure trying to create a more diverse and inclusive organization.
And if organization is just starting to think about it, just making the first steps, what would you suggest? Where to begin to implement, or even to draw up the diversity, equality, and inclusion strategy?
Well, I think it starts with the C-suite, and I think it's about making sure that the whole of the C-suite is absolutely behind the approach. And then I think it requires, some training. And I think the C-suite should get some training in the whole area of diversity and inclusion, because we all have our biases. We all have our subconscious, unconscious biases. And I think, making sure that the C-suite is equipped and prepared to evangelize this, to lead for this, to feel fully engaged and behind this. So for me, that's the starting point, is to get that C-suite and that leadership group fully behind a diversity and inclusion approach, and start with some training, just some basic training in this whole area of diversity and inclusion.
I completely agree with you. And as we just spoke before, I believe that events, cyclical events, is a fantastic way to get everyone together, really, to start something new and do the training together. But also, it's a great opportunity to see your workforce, the best talents, to spend a few days together. As a group interacting, where everyone is at the same level, everyone is learning something new, and yes, looking for implementing a new strategy. So thank you so much. It was lovely to talk to you, and we look forward to seeing you on the 27th of November at St. James's Place Wealth Management.